Greetings, family, and welcome back. I want to share some words of wisdom with you about fighting for your rights. Look, you deserve what you got in 2025 because you do not study history. If you keep going down the same path, you are going to get the same results. The path gets worn out, and over time, you think that is the only way to go. The path was made because you continue to trample along the path. Were there other ways to go? Could another path be taken? Should a new path be created? If you neglect that old path, eventually there will be overgrowth and the path will be covered with foliage. After years have passed, you won't even know there was a path there. The new path is like a new consciousness formed in the mind. We must study history to stop making the same mistakes along the wrong path. To combat apathy, we need to have activities that prime us for change. Other than that, you will continue to do what you think is comfortable, like going down the same old path. Well, Randall Robinson and Joseph E. Moore Jr. fought for our lives and created alternative paths for us to have a new consciousness. So let us make it manifest. So I dedicate this presentation here to my father, Joseph E. Moore Jr., and brother Randall Robinson. So the gentleman you see on the left side there with the glasses, that's my father, Joseph E. Moore Jr. He was born in 1928 and passed 2018. He was 89 when he passed, didn't even crack 90. Randall Robinson on the other end is, he was 81 when he passed. He passed in 2023. So there's a 13-year difference between my father and Randall Robinson. So different eras, but fighting the same causes, like for affirmative action, rights for people to have access to, a right to make a living. Fought apartheid in South Africa. They focused on divestiture. So with my dad, he had several things that he left for me to perhaps do some writings, prepare his work. When I say prepare his work, I'm just saying all his writings. He wrote for the newspaper. He letters as editor. He was the secretary for the Ambler branch of the NAACP. So just like the King papers, people have a library. My dad wasn't that famous, but the King papers were set aside for people to review and study over time. There are several libraries for presidents and all. So I'm just saying my dad had left some papers. Randall Robinson, you got to know who Randall Robinson is. Randall Robinson founded TransAfrica, at TransAfrica Forum in 1977. Here are some books he wrote. Defending the Spirit, A Black Life in America. Always want to do something that focus on Randall Robinson, so this particular presentation is dealing with his work. He also wrote a book, a very significant one we should know about. It's called The Debt, What America Owes to Blacks. Make sure you get this in your library, in your arsenal. He also wrote a significant book. We'll talk about this one a little later on, but An Unbroken Agony, talking about what happened with Haiti and the history of why Haiti has been decimated. But the kidnapping of a president will end this presentation here today with a description of how Randall Robinson helped out to, resolve that conflict. And also he wrote a novel. He has another book, but he wrote a novel called Makeda. So it's a novel, but that's how he kind of tells stories about what's going on in history. You tell it in a story fashion to get people interested in knowing what's really going on. So I wrote a book called Makeda. Get that if you can. And just think about novels. Martin Delany wrote a novel back in the day called Blake, or The Huts of America. Talking about revolution and change. Focus on what happened there in Haiti. But the novels give us a sense of what's really happening in the world. And I'll talk about this 2000 Seasons also. So I'll bring up 2000 seasons later, but again, I'm honoring this presentation for these two old black men. So my dad working, like I said, with NAACP. There's him with Evelyn Warner. They were very strong forces in a location up north called Penland, Pennsylvania, and Ambler, Pennsylvania. So they were very important for helping out people with, civil rights issues. My dad worked for Merck Sharp and Dome, so we helped out with affirmative action programs there. We see here now in 2025 where they cut affirmative action programs, but he did what he could to make sure people had equal access to jobs. He also fought for divestiture from South Africa, so the company that he worked for was not providing money for that racist apartheid regime there in South Africa. Well, Randall Robinson took it to a whole other level. So Randall Robinson, see right here, he's there with Nelson Mandela. I mean, he was in the mix. So he founded TransAfrica in 1977. He was a lawyer by training. The mission of the TransAfrica Forum was to serve as a major research, educational, and organizing institution for the African American community, offering constructive analysis concerning U.S. policy as it affects Africa and the African diaspora in the Caribbean and Latin America. He was president until 2001. His brother was Max Robinson, if you did not know. He died in 1988. Max was the first African-American broadcast network anchor in the U.S., ABC News. If you study who Max Robinson was, he didn't take any, like the day all the fake news, he wasn't having that. So that's why he was a problem figure for the white establishment, because he was not trying to mix words. He said it like it was. So there was a 13-year difference between my dad and Randall Robinson. And at age 13 is when my kind of was introduced to the struggle from my dad's work, taking me to, some of the meetings. And of course, at that age, not really paying attention to what's really going on. But I was not exposed to Randall Robinson's work until the 1990s. Basically, 13 years after retiring from TransAfrica, he also expired after he actually immigrated to St. Kitts, tired with the mess that's going on in the United States, all the work that he's put in, and seeing all the backwardness that's going on during the time period he was working, like during the Bush years, Reagan Bush years. We now fast forward to what's going on now in these Trump years. So they both would have been disappointed with all the work that they put in to dismantle racist and fascist policies, and here we now have them blossoming again. So he lived abroad almost for 13 years, in St. Kitts, away from America. So this 13 keeps popping up for me as a significant number for change. So as we deal with the change, let's look at some figures that are moving us backwards. So Randall Robinson and my dad, Joseph E. Moore Jr., fought against materialize in 2025. This leader or commander-in-chief that was selected, or whatever happened, has a German background, Nazi background. Why? Because that's what the name means. That's what it comes from. Trump. South African apartheid background. That's his buddy-in-chief. Elon Musk has a South African background. Both of those countries are problematic. And I have this book I want to share with you. So check this book out. This is called American Rule. I mentioned this before in another presentation, but How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People by Jared Yates Sexton. He has a part in here that deals with the Hitler and manifestation of the connection between Germany and the United States. The vision that Hitler gave his followers was shaped by his perception of the United States, a nation he saw as having pioneered the type of racist, stratified society he hoped to achieve and improve upon. His plan resembled the Confederate States of America, which he praised as the beginnings of a great new social order based on the principle of slavery and inequality. Hitler lamented that the Civil War had led to the disintegration of the Confederacy, but still admired how Jim Crow and legal segregation had created an ironclad racial hierarchy in the United States, leading him to believe in the possibility of a new world of white supremacy, immortalized in law as well as violence. So lost in this narrative, because we know about the lost causes of the Confederates in the United States. They lost the war, but they're the ones that have all the monuments, and we act like they're the ones that are the heroes. Lost in this narrative, however, were the ties that bound American society to Nazi Germany, and with them, the haunting yet necessary truth that fascism was not just an isolated phenomena limited to early 20th century Europe, but a pervasive human condition that could take poisonous root, like what happened in 2025, on any continent, and is happening in other countries right now, at any time, with any people. So it's poison. It's white supremacy is the disease. It's not even supremacy. It's not even supreme. It's just a way of some people thinking that they're the ones that should be controlling the world. I'm just saying this is important to deal with because this Nazi phenomena that was a world war to fight against. When you think about world wars, think about like people like Henry Ford. He wrote a book called The International Jew, where he was like, these people are trying to control the world. But Ford had made money on both sides of the world. Both sides of the war. Speaking of the World War. People who deal with oil. Germans need oil too. The Americans need oil too. So those people are providing funds for both sides. People make money off of war. Look at this book. Fugitives. A History of Nazi Mercenaries During the Cold War. What's a mercenary? Somebody paid to go be a soldier to fight on your cause. Listen to this. Because this is a guy named Reinhard Gehlen. Reinhard Gehlen. Gehlan. I think a similar name to like what's going on in Israel. There's a person over there named Gehlen. But it says, Truman, as an ex-past president of the United States, Truman administration imported German scientists, among them beneficiaries of Nazi slave labor, to the United States. Let me repeat that again. Yes, the United States allowed German scientists to come on in, and also other degenerates. Why? It says right here, money counterfeiters who forged currency for SS intelligence, that's for Germany, were eagerly sought by the Americans as well as other Cold War powers to work in similar pursuits for their secret services. The CIA, established in 1947, quickly joined the fray. It hired Nazis and other Holocaust perpetrators, Germans, Russians, Ukrainians, as spies and covert operators in frontier zones, as well as within the territory of the USSR and its satellite states. Others were asked to form stay-behind networks charged with organizing guerrilla warfare in case of a Soviet offensive. I don't think we're understanding this. What we're saying is the people they fought against in the so-called World War, between white people, those bad people then became mercenaries on both sides of the war, helping out the Americans and helping out the Soviets. So this thinking, these people, the Nazi doctors, Robert J. Lifton, probably have a hard time finding this book, but Nazi doctors, medical killing, and the psychology of genocide, where do these people come from? They came from that fascist government, but they went to other countries. From America to Argentina to Russia, other places they went, and the feeding of this particular thought pattern is now manifest, and that's what you see going on in the United States today. So in today, these two people become problematic figures for revolutionary forces and making change. They are planted inside this so-called greatest government on the planet that's about to fail because of the leadership, but it's almost like they want this to fail. Why? Because that's a way to control people. So when you think about control and the seasons, you have to be rememberers of the way. I talked earlier about novels. This is a novel by Ayikwe Arma, a Ghanaian writer, wrote a book called 2000 Seasons. If you get a chance to read 2000 Seasons, check that out, because he's describing like a novel historical parallel of slavery and what happened. But in the first chapter, it's called the way, how it used to be, and how we were taken away from that. But that's me looking at my dad during his retirement, remembering the way as he tried to lead, but at a certain age and stage, you're not really prepared to know what's really happening. As you become older and you become more developed, you become wise. That's why I shared those words of wisdom with you before we began. So how do we process all this? Look, there's problematic figures in the true liberation for African people. Look, Colin Powell. I don't know if you ever heard of Colin Powell, but he was oh my goodness, Colin Powell did everything. He worked under the Reagan administration, Daddy Bush administration, and Clinton administration. But Colin Powell becomes a problematic figure because, he was chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was National Security Advisor. He was a Secretary of State. I mean, he did it all. But during the time period that he was in place, you know what happened. Vietnam was problematic. Panama invasion, because they tried to get Noriega and got this guy out, said he was a drug dealer, but got a black man in there going after another black nation. And now look at this Gulf War. You know he was implicated in the lies about weapons of mass destruction. He was used. So we have to look at our black figures being used. Look at the second name there, Lloyd Austin. Lloyd Austin was a 4-star general. Basically, he was the Secretary of Defense under the last administration with Biden. But he becomes problematic because look what happened with the Palestinian and the Israeli conflict. He was there supporting the people who were the aggressors that killed almost 50,000 people. So as a leader of this country in the military, you now become implicated in the decimation of innocent people by going along with the empire. And his last name is definitely problematic today because he's also a 4-star general. You start to think about these people who get in these positions, they become pawns in the game to not allow true revolution to express itself. So Michael Langley is on record today saying that the brother in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, is a I don't know, called him a junta, like some kind of person that's trying to be a dictator and run his people. And dictator, where's he coming from with this? Well, this guy Langley is part of the African Command, so he's been put in a position to really squash African people gaining their independence. So think about this. They're picked and selected to stop the slaves from revolting. Burkina Faso, Mali, Chad, all those Francophone countries, Niger, they are fighting against the empire. So we as African people on the planet cannot fall into the trap of thinking like the empire because we're not a part of that empire. We have to focus on our people who are truly trying to gain revolution and change. And that's why I'm saying I respect Randall Robinson, because he would have been at the forefront of trying to deal with these issues today. And I want to play a little bit of Randall Robinson. I'm going to conclude today with his words as he describes what happened toward, the problem with Haiti and how they tried to decimate and get rid of a progressive democratic elected leader named Jean-Bertrand Aristide. So this is an interview conducted by Amy Goodman on her program called Democracy Now! Back in 2023. And it gives a sense of the power of Randall Robinson. If you did not know who he was, I've speak to many people and they've said they've never heard of him. I want you to hear his words here. Again, he retired and moved to St. Kitts because he was frustrated with what's going on in America, what was going on in America back then, and a lot of people today who feel like they want to leave America. But listen to Brother Randall Robinson, and we'll conclude on his words.
Continuing our look at the life and legacy of the human rights leader Randall Robinson. He died Friday at the age of 81 in St. Kitts, where he's lived since 2001. Randall Robinson was the founder of TransAfrica, played a key role in the launching of the Free South Africa movement, arrested many times at the South African embassy, and pushed successfully for the imposition of U.S. sanctions against apartheid South Africa. Randall Robinson also spoke out for years against U.S. policy in Haiti. In 2004, he helped expose the U.S. role in the coup that ousted Haitian President Jean-Bertrand Aristide, who was flown against his will to the Central African Republic. 2 weeks after the coup, Aristide defied the United States and flew back to the Caribbean, flying into Jamaica. Randall Robinson accompanied Aristide, flew to the Central African Republic, along with Congressmember Maxine Waters and others, picked up President Aristide and his wife Mildred Aristide, and flew back to the Western Hemisphere. I reported on that flight, joining them on that flight, and interviewed Randall Robinson about the U.S. role in the coup.
Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, and Donald Rumsfeld should be ashamed of themselves. President Aristide is the democratically elected president, the last time by 92% majority of Haiti, and he has come home to the Caribbean, where he belongs. He is the president democratically elected of the democracy that they overthrew. America ought to be ashamed of itself, and we are proud of the role we've played in bringing him home to his region, where he belongs and where we hope he will stay.
Randall Robinson later wrote about the U.S.-backed coup in his book, An Unbroken Agony, Haiti from Revolution to the Kidnapping of a President. In 2007, I interviewed Randall Robinson again. He described the day Aristide was ousted.
Later that morning, about 30 American Special Forces troops in full combat gear and 12 or 13 white Chevy Suburbans of the American Embassy surrounded the Aristide home, took positions on the wall around the home, and you could see the red tracer pattern crisscrossing, cross-hatching in the yard of the home. And into the yard came one Chevy Suburban with one of the Special Forces people fully armed, who was attending Luis Moreno of the American Embassy, who walked into the house and told the president, "I was here when you came back in '94, and I'm here tonight to tell you it's time for you to leave." They removed the president, Moreno, and the American Special Forces from his home, took them to the airport. The president, Mrs. Aristide, and Franz Gabriel took them from their home, boarded them on this large, wide-bodied aircraft with no markings, no tail number, only the sort of large flag, American flag, on the vertical tail assembly, and flew off, making their first refueling stop in the Eastern Caribbean in Antigua.
Our guest for the hour, Randall Robinson, just up from St. Kitts, where he has been living for the last 6 years. He's just published a new book called An Unbroken Agony, Haiti from Revolution to the Kidnapping of a President. Let's talk history for a minute, something the U.S. press doesn't give us very much of. To understand the U.S. role today in Haiti, can you go back in time to how Haiti was founded in 1804?
Well, Haiti was the largest piece of France's global empire. It was its great profit center, that slave colony with 465,000 enslaved Africans working there, many of whom had been soldiers in African armies before they were brought to Haiti. And in August of 1789, or 1791 rather, 40,000 of those slaves revolted and started a war that lasted 12 and a half years under the leadership of an ex-slave named, and a military genius named Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines. And this army of ex-slaves defeated two French armies. First, the French army before the completion of their revolution, and then another army dispatched by Napoleon under the leadership of his brother-in-law, and then the armies of England and Spain.